So welcome. This is the second Sunday at Interfaith Community Sanctuary, and we've all managed to get here and be in the same room, which is really the hardest part of any activity. And we're kind of on a skeleton crew with me and Rich. We usually have more people doing the universal worship on the second Sundays, but for various reasons, this is what you got. And I'd like to start by inviting our friend Zach up to get the ball rolling.
Morning, everybody. Morning, everybody out in home as well. Like I said, I'm Zach, getting the ball rolling. First thing we're going to do today is something we always do, and that's think about our place in the world, think about our place in existence, think about how we got here. So we all are here through basically some divine luck, essentially. We've all got some ancestors, not just moms, dads, grandparents, great-grandparents, all that you might know, but farther back, as far back as you can think, there's a lineage that's gotten us to right here. We're standing on, let's say, the shoulders of eons and generation of people. So the great thing about being alive and being aware and being in this moment is that you can reach back and you can think about and commune with, as it were, those folks. You can call those ancestors to be with you, and whatever they learned and whatever experience they had, that you can actually tap into that as well. And so at this moment, think centered where you are, think back to all those generations before, reach back in whatever way speaks to you, to those generations before, and call them all here. And all that combined knowledge, combined experience is here for us right now. As well as asking and calling in those ancestors from the past, we'll also need to think about where we are actually in this physical space. This particular location, this wonderful old building that we have, this floor, this ground that we're on, it's not necessarily our land, our ground. There was people here before us, just like all those ancestors. People here in this particular location were a set of folks called the Duwamish. Lots of various tribes and subsects of that, but in general, Duwamish, Coast Salish people. This still is Coast Salish and Duwamish land. So it's nice to acknowledge that we don't own this land. We're not the people who say what can and can't be done with this land. We're just basically borrowing it, and we should do that with some honor and some humbleness. So if you want to know more about the Duwamish folks, they are here. They're still here amongst us. They're not some people that are gone. There's a lot of Duwamish folks here, and unlike a lot of various tribal nations, the Duwamish people have not been formally recognized by the United States government, and that's in my opinion, a travesty, but that's beside the point. But nonetheless, you can find out a whole lot more about the Duwamish people. You can find out online at realrentduwamish.com, or you can actually go here, if you're in the Seattle area, you can go to their longhouse out in kind of, Duwamish area. So look it up, figure out things, and take knowledge and take notice of where you are and where we are in physical world. Thanks very much.
Yeah, they've got a longhouse down by the banks of the Duwamish. Imagine that.
Good morning. My name's Chris, and I'd like to also make an offering for the Divine Feminine, another tradition that we have been doing for several years, and I'm very honored and pleased to do that. This is also going to be a song that I've heard other folks sing. It's originally written by Z Budapest, and it's rather short, so I'd like to sing it through 9 times. If you'd like to join me, folks at home would like to join if they know it. So just taking a deep breath together. We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain, flowing to the ocean. We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain, flowing to the ocean. We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain, flowing through the ocean. We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain, flowing to the ocean. We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain, flowing to the ocean. We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain, flowing to the ocean. We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain, flowing to the ocean. We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain, flowing to the ocean. We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain, flowing to the ocean. Blessed be. Thank you.
Thank you. We should always start by singing together. Okay, now is a time where we talk about upcoming gatherings. But before that, people have often encouraged me to say something right at the beginning of the service about supporting us monetarily and with volunteer labor. Because we are a community that is that supports itself. We don't have any larger entity below us or above us feeding us resources or advice. So it's up to us. And we have a if you go to our website, if you're online, there's donate buttons prominently displayed. Just look around for them. interfaithcommunitysanctuary.org. And we'll do we'll pass a plate later in physical reality. Okay. Also, we want to talk about upcoming gatherings because there's lots of things that happen in this space and out of this space. Right off the bat, we are in the middle of our mostly annual treasure sale, which happened yesterday and will happen again, won't it, after the service? Looking around. Yep, sure will. Till what time? Till like 2 o'clock. But because we had the whole sale yesterday, there were amazing bargains to be had. So if you are out there in space, come into our reality and exchange goods. because there's lots of interesting stuff still left. And if you're actually already here, then you don't have far to go. It's all downhill. Okay, what else is happening? Would anyone like to make announcements about upcoming things? Let's run you a, let's run a mic, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Please do come and join us for the rest of the treasure sale, because there are lots of treasures, and we're doing real well with that. Also, on September 30th, which is a Saturday evening, 7 o'clock, we have our also annual-ish talent showcase, and that's where we gather all of our friends and neighbors and people who come to see us together and share 5 minutes of talent that we have. It could be anything from storytelling to music to dance to magic shows. I mean, we've had all kinds of wonderful offerings in years past, and the sky's the limit as far as your own imagination, what you might have to share. And if you were around during Peace Camp International this summer and you saw what the kids were sharing, which was so precious, for the kids from age 4 or 5 as youngest, up to the counselors, shared some of the most amazing offerings to their own community, and that's what we try to think of it here. It's a wonderful way to get to know each other on ways that we might not get to know each other on a Sunday morning, or even during our weekly classes. Please let me know, and by email, sallyjoegilbert@gmail.com, or see me after the service if you didn't catch that. If you would like to offer something, we're keeping the acts pretty short so we can have as much of a variety as possible, but we would love to have everybody share something with each other, and it's just a fun way to get to know each other. That's on September 30th at 7 p.m. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else have announcements for upcoming things?
Well, every Friday at 1:30 is a prayer in the Islamic tradition. Now, we haven't been doing it live here, but it is online, and I think the contact information's at the website.
Hmm?
But anyone who would like to join in that, you're more than welcome. And then first Saturday of every month, we have a study circle here at 3 p.m. where we're studying the writings of Meister Eckhart, who was a 13th century German mystic, and his writings are really wonderful. They were done in the form of sermons, and what we do is we pick one a month to read and then to discuss. So if you're interested, once again, it is on the website, and if you email us, George can get you out a copy of what we're reading for the next month. It's not long. Usually these things are maybe like anywhere from 6 to 10 pages. And it's really a good class, so I would encourage you to join if you can.
So would I. That's a great discussion. Yes, and Thursday we have a sitting in silence activity where we gather here and sit in silence. And that's, if you've never done that before, it's surprising how wonderful it is to do that. And if you've done it before, then you already know. And that's at Thursday, right here at 7 o'clock? At 7 o'clock, okay. And also on Mondays at 7:30, we have a Sufi celebration of reality with singing and dancing and music and prayer, 7:30 every Monday. There's other things that happen here. Look at the website. It's full of information. Okay. So I'm going to say a little something about our spiritual discernment, which is we use the spiritual discernment as a theme of most of our Sundays. This is no exception. We are in the third cycle of 4 cycles of our discernment that are sort of mapping out the spiritual path. And the third cycle is really about the experience of union, of bliss, of experiencing non-binary reality. I don't think I've ever said it like that. And the fourth part, which is we'll get into in October, November, December, is really about integrating that experience of bliss and union into our actual lives so that it actually transforms us, and not just us, but our entire world. Because once we have had the experience of union, which we have all had to some extent, which is one thing I'm going to be talking about today, then there is a natural transformation of the world that happens through us. And that's what we're going to be talking about for the remainder of the year. But we are still in this place of bliss and ecstasy. So we're going to talk about that today in terms of the mind. So our theme this month is dissolving the mind, which it was occurring to me this morning, may not sound like really positive to a lot of people. We're going to dissolve your mind. It's like, I can see why that would make people a little edgy. But we're going to talk about that today. And we're going to talk about that in the context of this universal worship ritual, which I'd like to just express my gratitude that we do this as a community, because, it's very simple. All we do is we get the scriptures of a number of traditions. It's sort of a representative handful of the tens of thousands of traditions that actually exist. In the Quran, or maybe it's in the Hadith, they say there's as many religions, as many deen, as many ways of looking at reality as there are human beings. So, the idea is that we have all of them here. The light in the middle represents the one, and the candles around it represent various specific traditions: Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, Christianity, etc. And the one sort of raised towards the front represents, we call it the truth candle, but it really represents all of the other traditions that are not specifically named on the altar, because the whole point of it is that it's like a vision of heaven. Not some heaven in the future, but the heaven that is happening right now, where all of the prophets and sages and messengers of all of these infinite, really, traditions that have come through from the one reality to our human conception are gathered together and worshiping in one place. This is what's happening right now. And we are enacting that with those prophets, with those teachers, with those ancestors. And I'm just so grateful that we get together and do that, because this is it's almost a kind of interfaith magic. It's a, it's a kind of shamanistic invocation where we call the ongoing reality of that heavenly celebration into our fairly limited viewpoint on space and time. So thank you all for being here, and we'll do it. Let's all stand up and say the invocation that is printed in a booklet. Towards the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance. Please be seated. To the glory of the omnipresent God, we kindle this light, symbolically representing the Hindu religion. To the glory of the omnipresent God, we kindle this light, symbolically representing the Buddhist religion. To the glory of the omnipresent God, we kindle this light, symbolically representing the Zoroastrian religion. To the glory of the omnipresent God, we kindle this light, symbolically representing the Taoist religion. To the glory of the omnipresent God, we kindle this light, symbolically representing indigenous religions. To the glory of the omnipresent God, we kindle this light, symbolically representing the religion of Judaism. To the glory of the omnipresent God, we kindle this light, symbolically representing the religion of Christianity. To the glory of the omnipresent God, we kindle this light, symbolically representing the religion of Islam. To the glory of the omnipresent God, we kindle this light, symbolically representing all those, whether known or unknown to the world, who have held aloft the light of truth amidst the darkness of human ignorance.
Praise be to thee, most supreme God, omnipotent, omnipresent, all-pervading, the only being. Take us in thy parental arms. Raise us from the denseness of the earth. Thy beauty do we worship. To thee do we give willing surrender. Most merciful and compassionate God, the idealized Lord of the whole humanity. Thee only do we worship, and towards thee alone do we aspire. Open our hearts towards thy beauty. Illuminate our souls with divine light. O thou, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, all-powerful creator, sustainer, judge and forgiver of our shortcomings. Lord God of the east and the west, of the worlds above and below, and of the seen and unseen beings, pour upon us thy love and thy light. Give sustenance to our bodies, hearts, and souls. Use us for the purpose that thy wisdom chooses, and guide us on the path of thine own goodness. Draw us closer to thee every moment of our life, until in us be reflected thy grace, thy glory, thy wisdom, thy joy, and thy peace. Amen. Everyone would please be seated. From the religion of Hinduism, from the Shivastotraveli, even the deadly poison that rests in a corner of your throat, O Lord, is supreme nectar to me. Nectar that is separate from your body, even if easily accessible, doesn't interest me. May my countenance be ever flushed with excitement from talking and singing about you. And may I ever be blessed with the desire to perform your worship of love. On the ways of the Supreme Lord cannot be reckoned. He has presented me his own being, bursting with sweet, immortal nectar, but yet does not allow me to drink. Entering you, my own being, the fathomless, the undifferentiated, the one without a second, devouring all sense of subject and object, O Lord of Uma. Ever may I worship and sing praises of you. We offer to thee, omniscient God, our reverence, our homage, and our gratitude for the light of the divine wisdom.
I love this scripture, and I use it a lot, not just this particular passage, but this book, because it speaks so clearly and passionately about the experience of the spiritual path. It's not so much a scripture that tells you what to do and what steps to take, as much as it just mirrors in poetry the actual experience. And that's really valuable and hard to do, especially in translating. But I want to talk about this sense of what we mean by dissolving the mind. And I think the main point I want to make at the beginning is that there are various degrees of this experience of going beyond the mind. And, you know, there's everything from this sort of blow away all of your conceptual frameworks enlightenment experience to just taking a gentle indrawn breath and kind of letting things go. And what I'd like to say is those are both the same experience. They're just different levels of intensity and integration. But it shows us that we can go in a different direction. We can turn our will in a different direction than the mind world, because there is a deeper reality than anything we can grasp with our minds. And this is easy to see in kind of a logical sense, because our minds work through separating things and classifying things. So our minds are all about separation, which is not bad. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to make breakfast. So, which is important. What?
What are we having?
Bagels. Next. Thank you, Lila. There's a, whenever we move away from the mind that wants to classify and control things, we are moving in the direction of unity. Rather than moving towards separation and manifestation, we're moving towards unity. We can do that in incremental stages, or we can do that in one, final leaping into the abyss, and everything in between. But that's what it's really about, is setting your will in the right direction. And that unitive reality of God, or whatever you want to call it, Dharmakaya, will pull you in. All we have to do, in a sense, is stop struggling. So there's lots of maps and metaphors and kind of symbolic ways of talking about this, and we're going to touch on a number of those. But it's in the same way that language fails to express the extreme simplicity of this experience, so do all maps and symbols fail. So that's just something to keep in mind as we throw a bunch of maps and symbols around. That exactly like language, they're just there to point us in the right direction. Okay.
From the Buddhist scriptures. Although apparent phenomena manifest as diversity, yet this diversity is non-dual. And of all the multiplicity of individual things that exist, none can be confined in a limited concept, staying free from the trap of any attempt to say it is like this or like that. It becomes clear that all manifest forms are aspects of the infinite formless and indivisible from it, are self-perfected. Seeing that everything is self-perfected, from the very beginning, the disease of striving for any achievement is surrendered. And just remaining in the natural state as it is, the presence of non-dual contemplation continuously, spontaneously arises. The 6 Vajra verses, quoted in Namkhal Norbal's The Crystal and the Way of Light.
So we have 2 Buddhist readings today. That was the first one. This is very different from the first scripture we read. This is actually trying to describe it not from a personal experience standpoint, but from a philosophical standpoint. Of all the multiplicity of individual things that exist, none can be confined in a limited concept. In other words, even though we're constantly saying that table, those flowers, this building, as a concept and almost we think of it like an object. We think of this building, for instance, or those flowers as discrete objects. But clearly, in reality, they're not. There's this building or those flowers or you, your body, does not exist without everything in the universe. there's no place where you can draw a line in the causal framework that brings your body into existence. And your body is constantly, and I say your body as like the table or the flowers, just as an object in the universe, but we're very attached, Your body is constantly related and supported by everything else in the universe. You can't in reality take anything out. That's what this means when this says none can be confined in a limited concept. None of the manifestations of reality that we think of as separate can actually be contained, because the more you go into them, the more you go into their actual reality, the more they are connected to everything else. And it could not be any other way. This is, this level of holistic perception never leaves us. It's the foundation for everything else we do. We don't actually live in a world of separation. We're just kind of unconscious of it most of the time. In reality, as it says here, the disease of striving for any achievement is surrendered, and the presence of non-dual contemplation continuously, spontaneously arises. So when he says non-dual contemplation, it's different from thinking about something. It's perceiving something without chopping it up into pieces. And those two, it's like two different modes of perceiving reality. And, in a sense, the completion of the spiritual path is uniting these two modes of perceiving. But our problem, most of us, is not that we don't think enough and separate things enough and discern enough. Our problem is that we don't experience the world holistically enough, and we're way imbalanced in one direction. So. And again, I don't want to make this seem like we have to have this amazing unitive experience in order to get there. Although my guess is everyone in this room has had those experiences over and over again, and just doesn't. We tend to not be conscious of them because they're so simple, and we take them so much for granted as the foundation of our very reality. So this whole thing is really just kind of like a little change of direction of our viewpoint. Let's read the next one. This next one is from Dogen Zenji, who we also have a lot of conversation with.
A Zen master said, birth and death, coming and going, are the real human body. Another Zen master said, birth and death, coming and going, are the real body. A third Zen master said, birth and death, coming and going, are the real human being. Yet another Zen master said, birth and death, coming and going, are the real true body of the Buddhas. Four masters each express it in their own way. All of them have straight nostrils, and they said it all right, but that's not quite it. If you asked me, I would not agree. Birth and death, coming and going, are just birth and death, coming and going. We offer to thee, omniscient God, our reverence, our homage, and our gratitude for the light of the divine compassion.
So this is a very characteristic Zen passage. And one thing he's saying is, language doesn't cut it. We're talking about something that's beyond language. All of these Zen masters are saying, this about birth and death, coming and going. They're all right. They're all speaking correctly. Dogen is just adding another way of doing this, and at the same time pointing out that he's moving us away from this worldview where we see discrete objects, that kind of billiard balls bouncing around sort of view, and taking us into a point of view that is all about relationship, that is all about process. The birth and death, coming and going, these are processes. This is what's real. Your body is not real in the same sense because your body is always in process. It's never a thing. It's always coming and going. It's always birthing and dying. It's always in a creative flux. What we think of as discrete objects are, you could, in a way, kind of probability fields. We work with the world as if there are discrete objects, which is good. It's just if we fall into believing it, then it's very easy to fall into a place where we believe what we think. And, all you have to do is turn on the news to see how dangerous that is. Okay.
From the religion of Zoroastrianism, from the Gathas. Mazda, most wise, is the supreme knower of all actions, performed in the past, and indeed of those which will be performed in the future, by the demonic ones and by humanity. Of all these, he himself is the discriminating Lord, be it with us as he wills. We offer to thee, omniscient God, our reverence, our homage, and our gratitude for the light of the divine purity.
So there's two things in this passage I want to bring out. One is this whole sense of God as the supreme knower, the discriminating Lord. And in other words, God is knowing. God's knowledge operates, and you can drop the God if you don't like that language. We're just talking about the underlying singular reality. And that underlying singular reality is not does not have the consciousness of a rock. It has the consciousness of God. And it is beyond our consciousness. Of course it is. Of course the thing that created us, the world, the underlying reality, the vast realm of existence that created us is more knowledgeable and more conscious than us. We have a very narrow slice of this, which is, and yet we can unify our consciousness with that. We can rest our knowing in that knowing. So we are not dependent on our limited viewpoint. That infinite viewpoint can actually function through us, which is really the way that we fulfill the purpose of our lives, that we fulfill our purpose as humans on earth, is by letting that larger mind work through our capacity. And I'm saying the same thing again. It's largely a question of just letting go of the idea that you're in control and letting that larger reality into your experience, into your perceptual experience, into your experience of your body and your heart and your mind. And the other thing about this knowledge, this vast underlying strata of knowing that we can rest our minds in, is that it is timeless. As it says here, knower of all actions performed in the past, and indeed of all those which will be performed in the future. Because there is, linear time is part of our particularly narrow worldview. And again, it's really useful. It's really useful for living the kind of lives that we do. And yet, it is not the deepest reality. I'm just going to have to take that as read, because otherwise I'll talk for 20 minutes about that and we won't get back to it. So let's move on.
From the religion of Taoism. From the Tao Te Ching. The way is unimpeded harmony. Its potential may never be fully exploited. It is as deep as the source of all things. It blunts the edges, resolves the complications, harmonizes the light, assimilates the world. Proudly still it seems to be there. I don't know whose child it is before the creation of images. We offer to thee, omniscient God, our reverence, our homage, and our gratitude for the light of the divine way.
So the way, the Tao, is as deep as the source of all things. It's not saying it's the source of all things, although it may as well be saying that. It's saying when you look back that far, you really can't say anything. That's why it says, I love this line, profoundly still, it seems to be there. I've looked at a lot of translations of this, and I've looked at the Chinese, and it sounds it's just as strange a line in any good translation. Profoundly still, it seems to be there, because we can't grasp it with our minds, but we can grasp it. Well, maybe grasp isn't the right, because we can't really apprehend it, but we can experience it. And we experience it, really, the only way we can experience it is by being one with it. We can only experience it through ourselves, through our experience of ourselves. This is the point at which many poets and teachers just start sort of waving their hands and blathering. I'm not going to do too much of that. But It is as deep as the source of all things. Just in the same way that I was saying earlier, if you go into any object, it is endlessly deep. There is no end to what is contained in any object, because it contains all of reality within itself, because it's connected to all of reality, as we said, both in the future and the past and the present. That's why it's one. It's the astounding simplicity of this is astounding in its simplicity. Also, this thing where it says it blunts the edges, resolves the complications, there's the sense where, you know, the beginning part of our life is about coming into manifestation. You know, you look at babies, especially like newborn babies, it's like they're not really in their bodies yet. They're kind of, you know, in the whole room somehow. They're just, you know, they have much wider boundaries, you know. And as we grow up, we get kind of into our bodies and we kind of figure out who we are, you know, and we're coming into manifestation. We're becoming distinct. But there's a point in our lives where we turn back in the other direction. And as we turn back in the other direction, we do become less distinct. We become more ourselves, but we become softer. We become less jagged. We become more connected. We become more receptive. You know, that's a natural process. There's a point that, you know, that's sometimes called the great returning. You know, there's a point in your life where you're not going forward into diversity anymore. You're bringing everything within yourself back to the source. And that's a natural process. You know, we kind of come from this realm up here and we go get into the earth and then we all go back. What was the song we just sang? We all come from the goddess and to her we shall return. There it is. And on that road back, we switch into a more receptive mode. It's more, and we become softer, and we become more receptive. And this is, we can give ourselves over to that process. And if we do, it happens a lot faster. And we get to experience the depth of that before we die.
From the indigenous teachings, from the Popol Vuh. This is the account. Here it is. Now it still ripples. Now it still murmurs. Ripples, it still sighs. Still hums, and it is empty under the sky. Here follow the first words, the first eloquence. There is not yet one person, one animal, bird, fish, crab, tree, rock, hollow canyon, meadow, forest. Only the sky alone is there. The face of the earth is not clear. Yet only the sea alone is pulled under all the sky. There is nothing whatever gathered together. It is at rest. Not a single thing stirs. It is black, kept at rest under the sky. Wherever there is that might be is simply not there. Only the pooled water, only the calm sea, only it alone is pooled. Whatever might be is simply not there. Only murmurs, ripples in the dark, in the night. We offer to thee, omniscient God, our reverence, our homage, and our gratitude for the delight of the divine relationships.
So this is a creation story. This is kind of like the part in Genesis before God speaks. This is the stillness. This is the place where there is nothing whatever gathered together. Not a single thing stirs. Whatever there is that might be, isn't. This is the place, this is the stillness before manifestation. And what's important to understand about creation stories is that they're maps of the universe. They're maps in time. It's saying, but instead of building a visual map, this is here and this is on top of it, and then it's presenting it as a linear narrative. But what they're saying is this level of stillness, this level of non-manifestation is at the beginning of everything, and it is at the source of everything, which means we're in contact with it right now because it is the foundation that we are built on. It's like the silence that sound comes out of. If you don't have silence, you don't have sound. It would just be, I'm not sure what it would be, a bunch of white noise. White noise is basically all audible frequencies happening at the same time, right? So there's nothing there, really. It's just noise. But if you break it up by silence, if you start distinguishing different vibrations, then it turns into music. So this stillness is the silence that the sound comes out of. It's the absolute stillness that activity comes out of. And this is also the foundation of our minds. Our minds are not our thoughts. Our thoughts come out of our minds. And it's where we start thinking that our concepts are actually reality, that we can really go down some very dark paths. But if we are in touch with this level of stillness, of silence, then we have a much better chance of manifesting the will of God in the world. And when I say it that way, when I use that theological metaphor, I'm assuming that the will of God is infinitely good. When I say the will of God, it's a name for the manifestation of the infinitely good, of the infinitely beneficial for us as individuals, as humanity, as the world. And if we are attentive to this level of reality, of complete stillness, of non-thought, because it is more foundational or more transcendent than our thoughts, then we are connected to the source. And good things happen then.
from Judaism, from Maimonides' Guide of the Perplexed. God endowed us with the intellect which is the means of our comprehension, and which our account of its insufficiency to form a true idea of God has become the source of great doubts. That he therefore knows what our defects are, and how worthless the doubts are which originate in our faulty reasoning. The psalmist therefore says, "He who teaches man knowledge, the Lord knoweth the thoughts of man, and they are vanity." We offer to thee, omniscient God, our reverence, our homage, and our gratitude for the light of the divine covenant.
So I don't have much to say about this because it's so plain. From the point of view of God, all of our thoughts are vanity. What it's saying is we have to check ourselves. We have to have some kind of humility and check ourselves when we keep building these mind world structures and we build concepts on concepts on concepts. And we forget that all the way down, we just made this stuff up. You know, all of our concepts are kind of like rules of thumb. You know, they're ways of working with the world. And when we forget that relational basis of their reality and start thinking that they are reality itself, and then we build more amazing buildings on top of this, and we can build some really beautiful mind world buildings, for sure. You know, that's what culture and history and all this stuff is about. But we are we're building with concepts, and we need to be able to step out of that mode. We need to be able to experience the world non-conceptually, or our experience, our perception of the world is covered by our concepts, just like bugs on a windshield.
From Christianity, from the letter of Paul to the Philippians. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. We offer to thee, omniscient God, our reverence, our homage, and our gratitude for the light of the divine sacrifice.
You know, this starts off really very much like the tantric thing we read at the beginning. You know, rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. And here he says, oh, where is it? Ever may I worship and sing praises of you. You know, this is when we have this experience of the nearness of God, it's natural to express it in one way or another. And when we do that, it's said in a number of the traditions, you know, that praise and prayer is our function as human beings, which I think often gets misunderstood as almost a sort of, you know, vampiric thing. You know, like, well, you know, like God somehow needs our energy or something. You know, oh, we better do our job and sacrifice a bull, you know. But that's not it. When we orient towards that simplicity of God, that peace that we know exists beyond our worried minds, will protect us, because we can rest in that, because that peace is not something that's like out there or on top of the hill. That peace is something that is foundational to our very being. And we can rest in that. You know, we do this every night. We do this every night. We lie down in bed and we give up. You know, it's not hard. And it feels good, right? I mean, what feels better? Okay.
From the religion of Islam. We have two readings. The first is from Fakhruddin Iraqi. Before this, there was one heart, but 1,000 thoughts. Now all is reduced to, there is no love but love. And the second is from Mahmoud Sabistari. While worldly signs are illuminated by the essence is not illuminated through these signs. All the world has appeared by his light. Yet how can he be revealed through the world? The essential light is not in the manifestations. Its glorious majesty would devastate them. Let go of your intellect and be with the real. A bat's eye cannot bear the sun's brilliance. We offer to thee, omniscient God, our reverence, our homage, and our gratitude for the light of the divine unity.
So this line in the first poem, there is no love but love, you know, he's echoing the Shahada, there is no God but God. And, you know, when we are oriented towards the source of all being, as I said, things are simpler. The closer you get to that ultimate simplicity, the simpler things become. So all of these maps, all of these metaphors, light, love, knowledge, they're all the same. Light is love, love is knowledge. We've talked about this a lot in previous years, but they're, so we can look at everything as a manifestation of this triad of love, lover, and beloved. And yet, the more and that triad, you know, of love, lover, and beloved creates the world. But when we go deeper into that, we realize that it's a relationship of unity, that the lover and the beloved are one, and that there is no mediation. If the lover and the beloved are one, there is no love creating a relationship between them, because it's one. The whole thing is, call it love, call it God, call it light. Doesn't matter what you call it. It's the ultimate simplicity. So the second passage is using this metaphor of light. and I almost don't want to say metaphor because it is what it is. It's, oh, that made sense. But it's a very good way for us to visualize it, because if God, this simple underlying reality, is the source of all light, light being that which reveals, in other words, that which makes knowledge possible, which enables us to see and perceive, if God is the source of all light, then that light is not revealing itself. It's not shining on itself. It's shining on the manifestation, so we can see the manifestation. But if we let go of our intellect, as it says here, let go of your intellect and be with the real, that's turning the light around. That's turning to look at the source of the light. And when you do that, you're using your mind, but your mind is not producing things. Your mind is not producing thoughts and concepts. It's not producing ideas about the source. That's what it means when it says here, the essence is not illuminated through these signs. We can talk about this endlessly, and God knows humans have talked about this endlessly, like we talk about everything endlessly. But that will never touch the source of the light. Anything we say about that reality will never touch or change that reality. It can only help us orient in our experience. In the same way that as we grow, we learn to not identify with pieces of ourselves. We learn not to identify too much with our bodies. You know, we learn that as young children. You know, we hurt ourselves as young children, and we think, you know, when we're really young, that's the complete picture of our experience is the pain. Ah, I'm hurting, you know. But then later we learn to distinguish the pain and our bodies, and oh, this is happening and it's causing me pain, but I'm still able to think about it and do something about it. And you know, then we learn to not identify with our emotions. Well, some of us do. You know, but we're able to say, oh, I'm feeling sad. I could do something about that. Or I could just, you know, go deeper into it. Or, you know, but you're able to like be on the outside of it in some sense. You're not identifying with it completely. We have to learn to do this with our minds as well, with our thoughts. You know, one of my teachers frequently used to say, worrying is praying for the things you don't want. We have to get outside of our minds if we're going to go deeper. We have to not identify with our ideas and our concepts. This is a lot harder than it sounds because we've spent a lot of time learning to identify with our concepts and building our worldviews and building our opinions and all of this. And to give it up, even for a little bit, often feels like we are giving up ourselves. because we're identified with those concepts, with our minds. We think that that is ourselves, but it's not. There are vastly deeper levels to ourselves. And the whole spiritual path, and I'm ending up where I started here, is just turning our will and our perception back to the source. And when we do that, that source just draws us in like gravity. At that point, we don't have to strive. All we have to do is give up and let it take us into the experience of our real selves.
We'll have a moment of silence. Most gracious Lord, Master, Messiah, and Savior of humanity, we greet thee with all humility. Thou art the first cause and the last effect, the divine light and the spirit of guidance, Alpha and Omega. Light is in all forms. Thy love is in all beings. And a loving mother, and a kind father, and an innocent child, and a helpful friend, and an inspiring teacher. Allow us to recognize thee in all thy holy names and forms, as Sita and Ram, as Radha and Krishna, as Shiva and Shakti, as Buddha. Let us know thee as Abraham, as Solomon, as Zarathustra, as White Buffalo Calf Woman, as Moses, as Jesus and as Mary, as Muhammad, and in many other names and forms known and unknown to the world. We adore thy past. Thy presence deeply enlightens our being, and we look for thy blessing in the future. O Messenger, Christ, Nabi, the Rasul of God, thou whose heart constantly reaches upward, thou comest on earth with a message, as a dove from above when Dharma decays, and speak the word that is put into thy mouth, as the light fills the crescent moon. Let the star of the divine light shining in thy heart be reflected in the hearts of thy devotees. May the message of God reach far and wide, illuminating and making the whole humanity as one single family in the parenthood of God. Amen.
The soul with mind is as water with salt. Mind comes from soul as salt from water. There comes a time when mind is absorbed into soul, as salt is dissolved in water. Mind is the outcome of soul, as salt is the outcome of water. Soul can exist without mind, but mind cannot exist without soul. But the soul is pure without mind and is covered by the mind. The mind covering the soul is as a globe. A sinful mind makes the soul sinful. A virtuous mind makes the soul virtuous, not in nature, but in effect. As a red globe on the light makes the light red, and a green globe makes it look green, though in reality the light is neither green nor red. It is devoid of color, color being only its garb. We offer to the omniscient God our reverence, our homage, and our gratitude for the light of the divine truth.